everybody, welcome to this SUPboarder video. We're really excited to bring you this video. We've got two boards here in the studio, the Starboard Generation 12.6 and also the Starboard Waterline 12.6. Now with the Generation behind me, we've been testing this board out for quite some time. We've got the new 2021 graphics with this board. It hasn't changed too much from the previous model. But what we really want to bring you is the new 2021 Starboard Waterline. Now this board, it's just got some crazy design features on it. We were super excited to get on the water to test this board. We're going to bring you all of our thoughts on this Waterline, of course also on the Generation. So this is going to be an overall review of the Generation and the Waterline together from Starboard. Let's first get into looking at the specifications of the Waterline. Now this one we have here is 12 feet 6 inches long, it's 28 inches wide. The thickness comes in at 7.5 inches thick. We have our tail width at 24.7 inches. We have a total volume of 224 litres. So the price on the Waterline is £1,115 in the light tech construction. And this board weighs in at 13 kilograms with that light tech, but they also have the carbon top construction, and with that the board weighs in at 10.8 kilograms. Must make a note as well that the Waterline does come in a 14 feet version with two different widths. You have the 28 inches or the 30 inch width that you can go for. Of course, that 30 inch width really tailoring for those heavier riders. But let's get into the Starboard Generation. Looking at the specifications on that, we have the 12 feet 6 inches in length, 28 inches wide. It is 6.3 inches thick and the tail width comes in at 16.5 inches. The total volume of the 12.6 is 249 litres. And the price of the Starboard Generation is £1,849. The weight on this one, well, it's the carbon top construction, so it comes in at 12 kilograms. And if you're looking to get the Starboard Generation in the light tech technology, then that comes in at 13 kilograms. So going through this video, we're going to be looking at these two boards separately. We're going to be really diving into the design features, letting you know how the board felt to us here at SUPboarder with all the team testing it as well. We're also going to be looking at pros, cons, value for money at the end. And of course, we're going to wrap up a summary. But to do a quick short summary right now, the Waterline here, really great for that flat water cruising, flat water touring as well. It's really silent board through the water. And once you get up to a little bit of speed, you can really notice some design features kicking in and giving it some real boost with a bit of spark as well when you are paddling it. The Generation, that's really suited to an all-round discipline. So looking at downwinding, take it into the surf, you can do some racing on it, you can do touring on it. It's a really great crossover board between different disciplines. So this board really performing well for an all-round paddler who wants to mix it up in the different conditions and really have a one board does it all kind of type. And I've said it before, but we are super excited to bring you the Waterline. So we're going to start with this board here, 12.6 by 28. But Ruben, when he got the board, when it was delivered, he didn't think that this was the right board that arrived. He looked at it, it doesn't really seem like, 28 inches here, but when you look back at the tail and it just seems like it's over 30 inches. The design really does mess with you and it really does put you off a little bit, and it's such a different design to so many other boards on the market today. So this is one reason that we really wanted to try this board, bring you our thoughts, impressions. So starting with the fittings of this board, up at the front we have a FCS insert, so attaching a camera mount or a drink bottle holder, just an accessory up there on the front. Moving back, we have a bit of a recessed deck here where we have our bungee cords so we can store a little bit of gear up on front. And then moving back from there, we have our EVA deck pad. Now we have a bit of a crocodile textured deck pad here. It's not that diamond pattern that we usually see on a lot of starboards, and especially with the Generation, it's not that kind of deck pad, but it's just a nice flat deck pad that is really comfortable. It's quite grippy as well when you are paddling. Stepping back from that, we do have that diamond pattern EVA deck pad when you do step back, and that's just really good for moving your feet around a little bit more. Of course, there is another bungee there as well, so that deck pad really does help when you are getting down to get to your gear at the back of the board with the extra bungee cord. We have a leash plug at the back, and of course a super square tail as well. We have a really comfortable handle up here on the board. I mean, Starboard's really known for their handles being really good quality, and they're also really comfortable to carry. On the sides here, we do have attachments for a shoulder strap, which does come with the package that you get with the board. And flipping the board over, we have a center fin that is placed right at the back of the board, and that's really going to help with your tracking, but we're going to get into that a little bit later on. So let's start with the obvious thing that you're all probably looking at right now, and that is the nose of the Waterline. It is so sharp. It is just so pointy, so narrow, really sharp, and it slices through the water like no other board I've ever paddled. This is by far the most silent, the quietest board to paddle. You don't get any splashing, you don't get any water coming up. It's just really, really silent and really cuts through the water just like a knife. It is just amazing, this board. Moving back from that, we actually have quite a narrow nose area. And what I really like about this part of the outline shape is that when you are reaching out for a paddle stroke, you can get your paddle a little bit closer to the center line. And I know that Will really noticed that when he was paddling as well. He really brought that to our attention, that you can get the paddle a little bit closer to the center line, which means you're going to paddle in a little bit straighter line. You're going to have a little bit better tracking. Coming back from that, our wide point on the Waterline is probably just back from the shoulder strap fitting that is about 3/4 of the way back on the board. We actually are standing a little bit further forward, so we're not standing on the widest point. We're actually in a little bit of a narrower point. What that means is we have actually a bit of a wider board behind us for stability. However, there is a fancy design feature underneath this board that we're going to speak about as well. So along with the nose, we have another design feature that maybe you haven't seen yet. So I'm going to show you that to you very, very soon. But as we move back again, that board stays really, really wide. Now we've got this board flipped over, and we did have a look at the bottom shape before. We've got an extremely rolled bottom shape from the nose right back to about where we stand on the board. And after that, it just goes really flat. It's just such a flat board. However, we move into the extremely cool design feature that I've only ever seen on windsurf and foil boards. And I know that Ruben and Will, coming from that windsurfing background, have seen this design before, but it's that cutout of the board. So we've actually got a lowered or raised, however you want to look at it, step on the bottom of our board. What that does is a lot of things actually, and this is really where the Waterline steps up into its own category with a board. This is such a cool board with this design feature. Now we've still got that really wide square tail, but you can see now that actually the board cuts in a little bit with the white against the red, and it gives you a little bit of a narrower planing area. To give you an overall view of how that design feature works, is that when you are getting on the board first and paddling slowly, that whole tail of the board is in the water. So even those stabilizers on the side, that cutout bit, are in the water, and that is slowing you down a little bit. However, once you start to get a little bit of a stronger paddle stroke and you start to get a little bit more speed and get up onto a plane, what it does is the higher part of the board, so that white part, actually lifts up, and you're not even really using the cutout bit of the Waterline at all. So you're not using all that width on the tail. So you're using a narrower area on the bottom of the board, which means you're going to be traveling faster. And it's exactly what I noticed personally. I weigh in at about 85 kilograms. Ruben weighs about 75 kilograms. And I think Will is just under 70 kilograms, so 68 kilograms or something like that. So we had a varied rider weights riding this board, and really we noticed different things about it. It's the same thing, but we had different feels on how that design reacted in the water for us. Because I'm a heavier rider, it took me a little bit more power to get up to speed, but I would really notice it once I got up to speed. You notice in these clips that we're putting over it now that when you do paddle slow, you have quite a lot of turbulence behind the tail of the board. And that's because there is a lot of board back there to flush out the water, and there's quite a lot happening as well to move that water around and release it. But once you get a little bit of speed up, you can see that actually that tail becomes a little bit narrower, and actually, when you are paddling, you can hear the turbulence on the tail disappear when you get up to speed. So as you are slowly paddling, you can hear all those bubbles behind you. And as you get faster, all you can hear is your paddle hitting the water. That is why this board is probably the quietest board on the market to paddle. Ruben, for example, he noticed it probably not as exaggerated as myself, just because he is a little bit lighter rider. He could get up to speed a little bit probably quicker. He's a bit lighter, so it's going to sit a bit higher in the water, but he did notice it as well. And then Will, he did notice it, but not as much because he is a lighter rider. He can get up. The board kind of sits a little bit higher in the water anyway. He's not sinking it too much. So it gets up onto a plane a lot quicker for lighter riders. Now, what does that mean for you if you are a heavier rider? What that means is you're just going to need to keep up your speed when you are paddling to get the most performance out of the waterline. What happens is once you are up to speed and you slow down a little bit, the tail kind of sucks you down, and because that wider outline grabs onto the water and it kind of puts a little handbrake on and it slows you down just a little bit. So you can definitely notice it. I really noticed it as well when I was especially riding bumps. So I got a couple little bumps on this board. I paddled it today actually as well. And I noticed that after I just fall off the back of the bump, the tail would catch. You could just feel a little judder, and you could feel yourself just not get off balance, but just a little bit of a slight movement forward onto your toes. So you really need to keep an eye on that if you are a heavier rider, but lighter weight riders, you can get up to a planing speed really, really easily on this. And that really makes this board one of the best boards out there for fast, flat water paddling, cruising, touring. So this board is not really for ocean paddling. It's not made for downwinding. I mean, you probably could do it, and we're definitely going to be bringing you a SUPboarder Pro test on this board to really show you what conditions you can take it out into. But it's really designed for that flat water, fast touring. So the ideal kind of time I'd take this board out is maybe really early in the morning when it's glassy, birds are singing, it's really quiet out there, maybe a couple of fish are jumping. And this board gets up to that planing speed really quickly. It's going to be super silent. You're still going to be able to hear everything around you. I think that would be the really nice times. Or if you paddle in canals or, narrow rivers where it's really calm a lot of the time, you're going to get a lot out of this board when you are riding it. But that really was one of the highlight design features for me, was that tail shape, the bottom shape on the tail. It just really does work. And as a heavier rider, I can actually feel it. I don't ride too many of these boards, but with this one, I really felt a huge difference in how it did perform. If you're looking to maybe cruise your local waterway, not at a really fast-paced speed, well, if you're a lighter rider, it's probably not going to matter too much. But if you are that heavier rider, we may be looking at other boards if you are looking for a board for that specific discipline. The fin you can see in the middle there, now we've mentioned it, it's quite far back. It's actually really far back. So if you have the fin, we've got it just back from center, and actually the fin sticks out behind the board. So that is really great for straight line tracking. If you have a fin that is further back, it extends out past the back of the board. What that means is you're going to have a bit of a longer tail on the board, and it's going to keep it moving in a straighter line. It's not going to keep moving from side to side. A few other things to point out on this board with how it felt is that when you were paddling, it was really noticeable that you could lean onto kind of one rail or the other rail, and you would really start to notice the board turn. So if you were paddling, say on your right side, and you were leaning on your left side, you're going to keep paddling in a straight line, a really great tracking straight line when you are moving forward. And then if you stop paddling, then you really did notice that if you started to lean on the rail, the board really did turn away from you. I mean, it works oppositely because of the outline shape of the board. If you lean on the right rail, it's going to turn left. If you lean on the left rail, it's going to turn to the right. That's all to do with water flow around the rails. I also did notice that the rolled bottom made it quite tippy when you were paddling it, especially at slower speeds when you weren't at that planing speed yet. Yes, you've got the stabilizer at the back here, but for those beginner riders, if you are looking to jump on this board, it's going to be a little bit tippy to start with, especially at that 28 inches wide. If you were looking at the Waterline, maybe going the 14 feet by 30 inches, which is a brand new board that they've brought out, I think that could be an option if you are, you know, that lighter weight or even a heavier weight rider, but a more advanced, or lighter weight and a little bit more beginner, intermediate with your ability level. So what are some of the pros and cons with the Waterline? Well, firstly, starting with the pros, we've mentioned it before, but it is such a quiet board to paddle, especially when you get up to that planing speed. So that nose slices through the water, you don't get any slapping of the water on the board. When you get up to that planing speed, you suddenly release all of that turbulence from the tail of the board. You're just using that narrower planing area, which means it's a super silent ride. So we said it before, early mornings, canal paddling. If you want something that is quiet when paddling, maybe you don't want to disturb the wildlife around you, you can really take it all in. Waterline is one of those boards that is going to be able to do that for you. The recessed deck as well, I really quite like that. You're a bit lower to the water, a bit lower center of gravity, so you're going to have a little bit more stability on the board. You've got those bungees as well. You want to put some gear on there. I had some gear when I was carrying it, so it does really help. You're really close to that gear at the front. You know, you can bend down, reach for the gear at the back as well if you needed to. And I think just even the light tech construction, I really like the overall look of this board too. It does look weird with the design features, yes, I know, but just the overall aesthetics of the board, it does look pretty cool. But it is also a spaceship, to be honest. It does look really weird. It looks like the board is kind of cut in half and there should be an extra, 12 feet on the back of it to really bring it back in. So, you know, have a 25 feet board. But actually, I think it does work quite well. Remember, we're going to be putting this board into a SUPboarder Pro video. We're going to be testing it out in a whole different range of conditions against other boards similar to it as well in the market. So make sure you sign up to SUPboarder Pro to check that out. But now let's have a look at the cons of this board. And I really think the cons only come into play if you are a heavier rider, say, you know, above 90, 95 kilos or maybe pushing 100 kilograms. With a 28-inch wide version, that you probably are going to really notice that handbrake style with that tail design. So, you know, you can really feel it kind of stopping. It sucks to the water with that wider outline, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get up to planing speed to get that tail out of the water to release all of that turbulence. So really do keep that in mind. And if you are that beginner rider, remember that it might be a little bit tippy as well. So with the Waterline, I mean, 1,115 pounds, to get a board that is this quiet, this kind of performancy when you are in that calm, still, flat water touring, cruising space, this is quite an affordable board with the light tech construction. I mean, of course, the price is going to go up if you're looking at the carbon top construction. We'll put that here in the video as well. But remember that the light tech is just as good. We were using this, you know, compared to the carbon top here. We didn't notice too much of a difference. It still feels really alive in the water. It's really responsive as well. So the Starboard Waterline, really great board. I think this is going to be really ticking the boxes if you are looking for fitness paddling, if you do a little bit of a faster touring or faster cruising pace when you do go out for your paddles, and if you are a lighter weight rider as well, say under that 85, possibly 90 kilograms. If you're under that weight, this board is going to be great for you because you can get up on that planing speed if you put in the hard strokes, and that way you're going to get a lot faster board with the Waterline. If you do weigh over that 90 kilograms, it's probably best to jump up to the 14 foot by 30 inches wide. Just means you're going to get a little bit more stability, you're going to get a little more buoyancy, so you're not sinking that tail too much, which means you can get up to that planing speed a lot quicker. But now let's move on to the Starboard Generation, the 12.6 by 28. The Generation is definitely an all-round board. Now this is the kind of one board for all different types of conditions. And if that sounds like you, well then make sure you listen in, because this board, it actually does do it all. We've been riding this Generation for quite some time. We've had it over the past year I know they've updated their graphics and things for 2021, but we were riding it last year. We had it in some big waves, we had it in some small waves, we took it downwinding, we took it flat water paddling. We've done a lot with this board, I can tell you that. So we do know it really well, and hopefully this is going to really bring you a good overall review and thoughts on if this board is going to be right for you. Starting off with the fittings of the Starboard generation, we have a diamond pattern EVA deck pad that comes up to just past halfway on the board. So what that means is you can actually step back to the tail of the board. You can use that when you're downwinding, you can use that doing step back turns, you can use it in the surf when you want to step back and make some turns as well. So really big deck pad all the way down, and that's going to really give you that grip when you are standing back on your board. We've got bungee cords up in front of the EVA deck pad for storing gear, and in front of that we have an FCS insert for camera mounts, water bottle or accessory mounts as well. On the bottom of the board we have 3 fins. We have a 2+1 setup, so 2 side fins and a center fin. And one of the notable things about the fins is that they are really quite upright. So what that means is the fins don't have a lot of rake to them, which means that they don't come back too far. They're quite upright, which means it really works well in the surf as a pivot fin. So instead of really carving and driving around, you're going to get a lot more kind of maneuverability off of the tail when you are surfing or downwinding this board. So it's going to give you a bit more sensitivity. The side fins on the generation are quite big. They are 5.5 inches tall, and the center fin on the generation is 9 inches big. So I think it's quite a good balance when you are looking at stability. So especially out in the waves, choppier waters, you're going to have those stabilizers with the side fins to really help you balance. And of course that kind of bigger center fin, not too big either. It's that really nice size that kind of fits into crossover between, you know, tracking in a straight line, touring, to that ocean, downwinding, surfing kind of discipline. So I think Starboard really have that balance right of the fin setup on this board. So looking at the outline shape of our generation. Now this board is pretty stock standard with the outline shape. We have quite a fuller nose, bit of a wider nose, going to give us that stability in choppier waters. Then we move really back and it's quite a parallel rail, and it brings in the width right at the tail with the generation. That's really going to help it maneuver and perform when you are in the ocean or surfing in the waves. The deck shape is quite rolled up on the nose there. What that does is it gives it a little bit more volume, a little bit more stability in those kind of choppier waters. But what that also does is it brings in a lot of windage. So with a little bit of a higher deck and a little bit of a higher rails, that wind is really going to affect that paddling. So if you are, you know, paddling in windy conditions, do keep that in mind. But as we go back, we have quite a flat deck for the generation where you are standing, and that runs pretty much all the way back to the tail of the board. So you've got a really great platform there for stability. We had a look at the bottom shape earlier on the generation, and that has quite a rolled bottom shape right the way throughout the board. We have quite an exaggerated V, which really kicks in from about halfway on the board back toward the tail in between the fins. And what that does is, as we are in those ocean conditions paddling, we do get a more sensitivity from side to side as we are transitioning from one rail to the other. Especially on the waves, you're going to be able to really lock in a rail and really go across the wave. If you are downwinding as well, you're going to be able to lock in that rail. But if you really need to quickly get up onto, you know, that flat planing, or you need to get onto the other rail to stay on the bump, then you can do that with that V, as it really rocks you from side to side. It's not actually that noticeable from a balance perspective when you are paddling in flat water conditions or touring. It doesn't really feel really unstable. I think that's really to do with that flat deck on top of the generation. But really this is one board to do it all. Like I said before, we had it out in a range of different conditions. Downwinding, this board really does perform quite well. I mean, it's not up there with the top downwinding boards because it's not, you know, specifically designed for that. It's a bit of a crossover board, but it does really hold its own as well. Getting onto bumps was really quite easy. Maneuvering was quite good as well. All that volume up on the nose. There's not a lot of volume like some racing boards or downwinding boards, but it gives you enough to have that stability and that confidence as well when you are out there in those kind of, you know, choppier, bit bigger surfing downwind conditions. Of course, it really does look like a surfboard shape. I had this board out last time. I think it's actually in some quite big waves. I think we've got some footage of that, which I'll play over the video now. But really, the board does surf quite well. Of course, it's 12 feet, 6 inches long. It's not going to be the best performance board out there on the waves, but you can do it. And I think this board would really go well in those smaller waves, kind of those ankle rollers. And that's where the board's really going to come into its own, because you can paddle fast, you can catch waves early, you can actually surf on the wave. And then if you wanted to paddle around the headland home, then you can actually do that, because it's still got the length, it's got that great bottom shape that's going to really funnel the water well. And I think it's just a really great all-round board that a lot of people are going to really transition toward, because a one board does it all kind of thing is really great for your quiver. It's something that I definitely will have in a quiver. I know Will, Ruben, Lucy, everyone here at SUPboarder really does like this board, because you can cross over between so many different disciplines. What are some of the pros and cons of the Generation? Well, looking at the pros, of course, all-round board is going to perform in a range of different conditions. We've got great stability on this board as well, even though it's 28 wide. I think the fittings on the board, I like the addition of that mount as well. It's really easy for us to film as too, which is nice, but it's also great to you know, film yourself or put some accessories on there. And the rails as well, I mean, although they are quite boxy all the way along, what they do is they thin out a little bit at the rails. It's not super thin at all. It's still got that volume there for your touring, exploring, for your downwinding as well. But it just does have that buoyancy that you need, that stability when you step back. So it's really great to see that they've kind of foiled that rail shape a little bit. Looking at the cons of the Generation, well, let me think. There aren't actually that many cons to this board. It's really a jack of all trades. The only thing I would say, it's a master of none. So if you are looking for a board that is more specific for a certain discipline, maybe looking at the Waterline if you want a flat water, you know, fast flat water touring, or kind of that bit faster paddling, or maybe looking at the All-Star or something like that if you are into more racing or downwinding or something like that. But the Generation, it does it all. So if you are looking for something that can cross over between a lot of different things, the Generation is definitely going to do that. Value for money with the Generation, I mean, that 1,800 pound mark, 1,849 pounds, you are getting some great value for your money, because the board does it all. It crosses over different disciplines. You're not going to need a board to go downwinding. You're not going to need a board to go flat water touring. You're not going to really need a board to surf on those smaller days. So 3 boards in one, probably 4 boards if you want to take it into like some recreational racing or something. You're getting 3 or 4 disciplines for the price of, well, less than what a Starboard, you know, Blue Carbon Pro surf shape costs. So really, really fantastic to see that these price points on these boards are really made for people who want to get into that flat water side, who want to get into the ocean with the Generation. These boards are really fantastic if you want something that is a little bit more specific with the Waterline, or does a little bit more all-round stuff with the Generation. Wrapping up the Starboard 12.6 by 28 Generation in the carbon top construction. Now, this board is going to suit a whole range of riders out there. Riders up to around that 100 kilogram mark if you are getting to that a more advanced stage. But if you say under 90 kilograms and you want something that's going to do it all, then the Generation is definitely that board. We know that Will, he weighs in at just under 70 kilograms, really likes this board to paddle. We've had Lucy, we've had Rachel on this board paddling it. They're all really lightweight riders, so really enjoying how this board performs. And then of course myself, a little bit heavier. Still, I really like the way that the 28-inch feels. It's really stable on the water. But if you are kind of pushing that 100 kilogram mark, opting for that longer version is going to be the best for you. And this review was really exciting for us to bring you and also to do, because it's such a new design with the Waterline that we were just so excited to get on the water to really test this board out. We've had it out over the last few days, been really enjoying how it feels, how it moves in the water, really getting used to that wider outline at the tail, the different bottom shape underneath, the different nose shape, and of course just riding the Generation in all these different types of conditions. Having a board that does it all is really going to progress your stand-up paddleboarding. But I really hope that you enjoyed this review and this little bit of a comparison between these two boards. We're going to be doing a lot more videos on these boards specifically, so make sure you keep an eye out for those coming out in the future, both on YouTube and on SUPboarder Pro. Make sure you head over and check all of that out. Really thank you for all your support watching these videos. They really do help us to create more content like this and bring you technique, features, and all of the other stuff that we do here at SUPboarder. So really big thanks to you, all the viewers, and we really hope to see you on another SUPboarder video really soon.